Let's confront the truth with clarity. You are not lazy, and deep down you know this. You were not born to stagnate, nor were you created to simply exist. You are a person with immense potential, and your very DNA reflects a capacity for greatness. You are like Atlas, bearing the weight of dreams, expectations, and the demands of a world that expects you to deliver the impossible at a moment's notice. However, the exhaustion you're feeling, the sense of paralysis, is not a sign of failure, it's burnout. Plain and simple. What you're experiencing isn't laziness, it's a symptom of being stretched beyond your capacity, of suffocating under an overwhelming pile of shoulds and musts. To those who are the dreamers, the doers, and the chosen ones, the ones destined for greatness, it is time to call burnout what it truly is: a desperate cry for rest, recalibration, and a reclaiming of your fire. We need to shed the guilt that so often accompanies this exhaustion, the guilt that tells us we should keep pushing, should keep doing, without recognizing the importance of rest and self-care. Instead of berating yourself, recognize this exhaustion for what it truly is: your spirit, your body, and your mind begging for restoration. There is no shame in needing rest. In fact, it's a necessary part of the process of growth and purpose. As Christians, we must recognize that God's plan for us does not include a constant cycle of burnout. Instead, He calls us to a rhythm of work and rest, balance and renewal. In Matthew 11, verse 28, Jesus invites us to lay our burdens down. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. This invitation is not just a promise for physical rest, it's a spiritual one. When we push ourselves beyond what we were designed to bear, we are not only neglecting our physical needs, but also the spiritual rhythm that God has intended for us. The truth is, burnout is not a sign of weakness or laziness. It is a sign that we are not walking in alignment with God's design for our lives. Burnout, much like the tale of Orpheus in Greek mythology, can strip away the vibrancy of life. Orpheus, a man whose music could charm gods and mortals alike, lost his purpose when his connection to that which once brought him joy was severed. After losing his beloved Eurydice, his music became a hollow echo of what it once was. His spirit, weighed down by grief and despair, lost its rhythm and became disconnected from the beauty of the world around him. His once vibrant melodies faded into silence. Burnout works in much the same way. It strips the color from the world, leaving everything muted, distant, and meaningless. When burnout takes root, we find ourselves disconnected from everything that once gave our lives purpose: our work, our relationships, our passions. All of it starts to feel like a burden. The very things that once set our souls on fire now seem like tasks too heavy to bear. This is not laziness. It is the result of a spirit stretched too thin, a body and mind overwhelmed by the pressures of life. Burnout is not a sign that we are broken. It is simply a reflection that our connection to what once made us whole has been severed. This realization that you are not broken but disconnected is a crucial first step toward reclaiming your rhythm and finding your way back to the divine purpose that is waiting for you. In those moments of exhaustion and disconnection, remember this: you are not alone. Psalm 34 verse 18 tells us that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. When we find ourselves feeling burned out and lost, God is not distant. He is near, ready to restore us and to help us find our way back to the path of purpose. He is the God who sustains and strengthens us, even when we are at our weakest. The loss of motivation is another undeniable sign of burnout. When once you were filled with purpose, energy, and a drive to conquer the challenges before you, now even the smallest task feels like a mountain too steep to climb. Motivation does not vanish without reason. It withers under constant strain, extinguished by a cycle of overextension and self-doubt. This loss of motivation is not an indication that you have lost your potential or your worth. On the contrary, it is simply a sign that you have been running on empty for far too long, that you've been pushing yourself beyond the limits of your strength. When your ambition turns to dread, when what once excited you now feels burdensome and meaningless, this is not a loss of your dreams, it's a call to rest, to recalibrate, and to reconnect with the deeper purpose that God has placed within you. In 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, Paul writes, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness, therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me.'" God does not expect us to live in a state of constant productivity. Instead, He desires to meet us in our weakness, to give us His grace and strength in those moments when we feel depleted. It is in these moments of burnout and exhaustion that we can lean into His sufficiency and find the restoration we so desperately need. The loss of passion is yet another sign of burnout. The fire that once drove you, whether in your work, your relationships, or your passions, seems to have been extinguished. What once brought you joy now feels like a chore. This is not a sign that your dreams have died, but that they have been smothered by fatigue, by overwork, and by the relentless demands of life. But just as a fire can be rekindled, so too can your passion. This period of burnout is not permanent. It is simply a season. As Isaiah 40 verse 31 promises, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles, they will run and not grow weary, they will walk and not be faint." God promises to restore our strength, to reignite the passion within us, and to renew our sense of purpose. Burnout may feel like a void, a chasm where once there was vitality and drive, but it is in this space that God does His most transformative work. He does not leave us in this state of exhaustion. He meets us here, offering His peace, His rest, and His renewal. It is in these moments of stillness that we are given the opportunity to recalibrate, to reflect, and to realign ourselves with the purpose God has set before us. Just as Jesus withdrew to quiet places to rest and pray, Luke 5 verse 16, we too must recognize the importance of rest in our own spiritual and emotional well-being. In this time of burnout, it is essential that we do not view rest as a luxury or something to feel guilty about, but as a necessity. In fact, rest is an act of trust. It is a declaration that we believe God is in control, that He will provide, and that we are not meant to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders alone. Jesus' invitation in Matthew 11 verse 28 to come to Him and find rest is a promise we can claim in these moments of burnout. It is not a sign of weakness, but an act of surrendering our burdens to the One who can handle them. So let us stop calling ourselves lazy. Instead, let us acknowledge the burnout we are experiencing and take the necessary steps to reclaim our fire, our passion, and our purpose. Let us rest, recalibrate, and return to the rhythm of life that God has intended for us. We are not meant to live in a state of perpetual exhaustion. God has created us for so much more. When we align ourselves with His rhythm, we will find the strength to rise again, to pursue our dreams with renewed vigor, and to live out the purpose He has designed for us. In this season of burnout, remember God is with you, offering rest, renewal, and restoration. Trust in His grace and His timing, and know that this season will pass. Your fire is not extinguished, it is simply waiting to burn brightly once again. You're not indifferent, but exhaustion has robbed you of the spark that once made everything feel worth it. It's not that you lack passion or purpose, but burnout doesn't just slow you down, it turns what once fulfilled you into an uphill battle with no summit in sight. Think of Santiago from The Old Man and the Sea. His love for the sea, the thrill of the catch, didn't fade, but after days of struggling against the relentless marlin, exhaustion consumed him. The weight of his weariness overshadowed his passion for his craft. The fight for survival drained him of the joy he once knew. Even though he persisted, it came at a cost without reprieve. Even the most meaningful pursuits lose their light. This loss of passion isn't failure, it's fatigue. It's not about giving up, it's about recognizing that your spirit can't thrive under unending pressure. The things you love haven't abandoned you, and you haven't abandoned them. But without rest, without renewal, the fire cannot burn. As C.S. Lewis said in the Screwtape Letters, to be in time is to be in a world where all things are eventually consumed without renewal, without time to rest and reflect. everything we value slowly gets extinguished. Rest isn't indulgence, it's fuel. Passion needs space to breathe, and so do you. Burnout manifests in many ways, and one of the most noticeable is moodiness and irritability. You were once steady, calm, the one who held everything together. But now, even small things set you off. A misplaced word, a minor inconvenience, the constant weight of demands pressing against your limits. This change in demeanor is not who you truly are, it's the toll of burnout, making your emotional skin paper thin, leaving you raw and exposed. It's a sign that you've carried too much for too long, and now your body and mind are rebelling. Your patience becomes a luxury you can no longer afford, and like the waters growing turbulent before they break against the shore, your irritability signals an internal pressure building to dangerous levels. This isn't because you lack control, it's because your reserves have been depleted. As the Apostle Paul reminds us in 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.'" In our moments of fragility, God's grace becomes the very thing that sustains us. The fifth sign that you're not lazy, just burned out, is neglecting self-care. This silent collapse happens when you're too overwhelmed to prioritize your well-being. You stop showing up for yourself because everything feels like too much. Simple, basic needs, eating well, sleeping enough, moving your body, fall by the wayside. You sacrifice your own self-care on the altar of survival. The routines that once kept you grounded now seem unnecessary, indulgent, or just another demand that you can't meet. You keep running on empty, ignoring the warning lights flashing all around you. It's almost as if you've convinced yourself that there's no time to pause, no time to breathe, no time to care for yourself. But as the Bible teaches us in Mark 6 verse 31, then because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Even Jesus, in the midst of his ministry, knew that rest was necessary. If we neglect ourselves, we neglect the very vessel through which God's work is done. This isn't laziness, it's a symptom of being stretched too thin. You care more than most, and that's why you push yourself harder, striving to meet expectations and relentlessly pursuing your purpose. But when you care too much, you risk depleting yourself. The pressure to excel, the need to meet the demands of those around you, and the weight of your purpose can push you beyond your limits. But let us remember the words of Philippians 4 verse 13, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It is through him that we are able to endure, to rise above, and to continue in our journey with renewed strength and determination." Let us take a moment to honor the chosen among us, the dreamers, the doers, the silent guardians, and the watchful souls. These are the ones who see the world differently. They forge their own path, fighting unseen battles, illuminating the shadows. They don't fit the mold, and they wouldn't have it any other way. It's not for everyone, but if you feel it deep within you, you'll know it's meant for you. No masks, no pretense, just truth. As you journey through life, remember that burnout does not define you. It is simply a signal from your body and spirit that you need rest, recalibration, and restoration. Just as the Israelites were led to the promised land after years of hardship and struggle, you too are called to reach your destination, but not without pausing along the way. God knows the burdens you bear and offers you his grace to carry them. Take time to rest, to reconnect with your purpose, and to remember that even in your weariness, God's strength will sustain you. You were made for this, chosen, called, and equipped to rise above the challenges and fulfill your divine purpose. Keep going, but remember, rest is not only essential, it is part of the journey. In life, those who are chosen to walk a unique and purposeful path often find themselves facing challenges that others may never understand. It's not a life chosen for fame or recognition, but a life defined by a deep inner calling to fulfill a greater purpose. As believers, we know that our journey is not always smooth, and the resistance we encounter is often fierce. Just as Jesus warned in John 15 verse 18, If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. The path of the chosen is fraught with opposition, spiritual attacks, and challenges that feel insurmountable. These struggles are not random or without purpose. They are part of God's divine plan to shape and refine us, to strengthen our faith, and to test our resolve. Every step forward feels like a battle, but as we endure, we grow stronger. Opposition is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of our calling. The more we strive to rise, the more resistance we face, and this can lead to burnout if we don't recognize the need for rest. Like waves relentlessly crashing against a cliff, the weight of spiritual and emotional battles can leave us drained. In those moments, it's easy to question our purpose, but we must remember that we are not alone. God is with us in the struggle, offering His strength when we feel depleted. S.C.S. Lewis once wrote in the Screwtape Letters, "The more you can increase in a person the desire for duty, and the more you can make it an image of hell, the more you have succeeded in the temptation." Our struggles, while difficult, are not signs of abandonment. They are part of God's larger plan to refine us and shape us into the person He has always intended us to be. The second reason why chosen ones experience burnout is emotional overload. Empathy is a gift, but without boundaries, it can become a silent thief, draining our energy and leaving us emotionally exhausted. We often carry not just our own burdens, but the burdens of others as well. We are the ones others turn to, the ones who listen without judgment, who offer support when no one else does. But constantly holding space for others without receiving that same care in return can leave us feeling empty and isolated. As Proverbs 4 verse 23 reminds us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. When we give of ourselves without replenishment, we begin to feel the weight of it all, and burnout becomes the inevitable consequence. The key is to recognize that caring for ourselves is not selfish, it is necessary. We cannot pour from an empty cup. Setting boundaries is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of wisdom and self-care. As Jesus said in Mark 6 verse 31, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place, and get some rest." Even Jesus recognized the need to step away from the demands of others and recharge. The third reason why those chosen for a higher purpose often face burnout is isolation and misunderstanding. The path we walk is often lonely, and few people can fully understand the weight we carry. Our purpose, vision, and struggles set us apart, and while others may admire us from a distance, they often fail to see the sacrifices we make. This can lead to feelings of loneliness, even among those who care for us. But it is important to remember that we are never truly alone. Jesus Himself walked a solitary path at times, knowing the deep emotional and spiritual cost of fulfilling His mission. In Matthew 26 verse 38 He says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Jesus experienced the weight of isolation, and in those moments He turned to His Father for strength. Similarly, we must recognize that our purpose is not always understood by others, but it is understood by God. He sees our struggles and offers us comfort and strength in the quiet moments of isolation. As we continue our journey, we must acknowledge the signs of burnout and recognize that they are not a reflection of our worth or calling, but a signal that we need to rest and recalibrate. God's purpose for us is not to push us beyond our limits, but to shape us into the person He has designed us to be. In times of exhaustion, we must lean into His grace, trust in His plan, and know that He will provide the strength we need to continue. Burnout may be a natural consequence of living with purpose, but it does not have to define us. As C.S. Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity, God does not simply want us to follow a path, He wants us to be transformed by the journey. Through rest, renewal, and trust in God, we can reclaim our strength and continue on the path He has set before us. Keep going, for you are chosen, and your journey is part of a greater story. The fifth reason why chosen ones are prone to burnout is the overwhelming toll of intense spiritual awakening. Awakening isn't peaceful, it's disruptive, shaking the foundation of who you thought you were. You face spiritual, emotional, and physical upheaval all at once, as if every fiber of your being is being torn apart and rewoven. It's not a gentle nudge, it's a storm that forces you to confront truths, wounds, and realities that others might never face. Spiritual awakening demands more than clarity, it demands a reckoning. The process is exhausting, requiring you to release old identities and embrace new ones, often in isolation. It's a test of faith, one that often leaves you drained and questioning your path, even though you know it's essential for growth. Burnout doesn't just come from overwork, it comes from the emotional strain of feeling isolated in your struggles. Your strength sets you apart, but it also makes you a solitary figure in a world that often prizes comfort over courage. Being misunderstood isn't just frustrating, it's exhausting, leaving you feeling unseen even in a crowd. Loneliness isn't about being alone, it's about the disconnect that comes when those around you can't grasp the depth of your journey. You're the one who takes the hard road, who pushes beyond limits, and who faces battles most wouldn't dare. But in doing so, you find yourself in a space where few can meet you. They don't understand the sleepless nights, the doubts you wrestle with, or the resilience it takes to keep moving forward. Acknowledging this isn't a weakness, it's a step toward reclaiming connection and support. You're not meant to carry it all alone. The fourth reason why chosen ones are prone to burnout is the lack of proper boundaries, an invisible enemy that drains your energy every time you say yes when you desperately need to say no. You're wired to give, to help, to rise to the occasion. But that strength becomes your undoing when it's stretched too thin. Every request, every demand, every responsibility you take on chips away at your reserves until there's nothing left for you. You don't just take on tasks, you take on the weight of others' expectations. You're the one who steps up when no one else will, the one who keeps going even when you're running on fumes. But saying yes to everything is saying no to yourself, and overcommitment isn't a badge of honor, it's a recipe for collapse. The more you pour out, the less you have to give, and burnout is the inevitable consequence of always putting yourself last. Boundaries aren't walls, they're lifelines. Without them, you're giving away pieces of yourself until you're barely whole. Struggling to say no isn't a flaw, it's a learned habit that keeps you overextended. To reclaim your strength, you must protect it. Saying no doesn't make you less, it ensures you're enough for what truly matters. You make or break your journey. The toll of being misunderstood isn't just frustrating, it's exhausting, leaving you feeling unseen even in a crowd. Loneliness isn't about being alone, it's about the disconnect that comes when those around you can't grasp the depth of your journey. You're the one who takes the hard road, who pushes beyond limits, and who faces battles most wouldn't dare. But in doing so, you find yourself in a space where few can meet you. They don't understand the sleepless nights, the doubts you wrestle with, or the resilience it takes to keep moving forward. Burnout doesn't just come from overwork, it comes from the emotional strain of feeling isolated in your struggles. Your strength sets you apart, but it also makes you a solitary figure in a world that often prizes comfort over courage. Acknowledging this isn't a weakness, it's a step toward reclaiming connection and support. You're not meant to carry it all alone. In the journey of spiritual growth, there comes a point where transformation demands sacrifice. The old patterns, beliefs, and comforts that once defined you are stripped away, leaving you raw, vulnerable, and exposed. You begin to feel emotions that are difficult to explain, exhaustion that feels inescapable, and sensations within your body that make no logical sense. This is not merely fatigue, it is a process of transformation. It is the breaking down before the rebuilding. The intensity of this season can leave you drained, questioning your strength, your purpose, and whether you can continue moving forward. It is during this phase that burnout often follows awakening, for the process does not pause to allow you time to catch your breath. Instead, it pushes challenges and demands. However, this is not the end, it is a shift. Recognizing that fatigue is not a sign of giving up, but rather an acknowledgement of the magnitude of what you are experiencing, is vital. You are not broken, but rather you are becoming. The weight you feel is growth, but even growth requires rest to truly thrive. As it is written in Isaiah 40 verse 31, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, they shall mount up with wings, as eagles they shall run, and not be weary, and they shall walk, and not faint." It is in moments of rest and stillness that you are made strong again. The relentless pressure of a divine mission also plays a crucial role in burnout. As a chosen one, you feel the weight of a calling so immense that it consumes your thoughts, your energy, and your very being. Every decision feels monumental, every step forward scrutinized, and every setback feels like failure not only to yourself but to the higher purpose you serve. The responsibility to fulfill what feels like destiny looms over you, demanding everything you have, and then some. This pressure is suffocating because it allows no room for rest and offers no margin for error. However, we must remember that no divine mission was ever meant to be fulfilled through self-sacrifice alone. Burnout does not honor your calling, it diminishes it. You are not meant to collapse under this weight, you are meant to rise within it. As C.S. Lewis wrote in the Screwtape Letters, "The best thing you can do for your own soul is to seek your rest in Him, and the best thing for others is to become whole again yourself." To carry the mission, you must first carry yourself, which means recognizing when you need to pause, breathe, and replenish your strength. Another reason chosen ones are prone to burnout is neglecting their own needs in service to others. It is a silent sacrifice made in the name of helping others, pouring yourself out endlessly while your own well-being falls to the bottom of the list. You convince yourself that it is noble to prioritize others, that your needs can wait. But this is not heroism, it is self-neglect, and it comes at a heavy price. The more you give, the less you have for yourself. You overextend yourself, saying yes even when it drains you, stepping in when others fall short, and carrying burdens that were never yours to bear. In the process, your own health, rest, and peace are sacrificed. Bit by bit, you deplete yourself until only exhaustion and resentment remain. Burnout is the inevitable result of always putting others first without replenishing your own spirit. Remember, you cannot serve from an empty vessel. As Jesus said in Mark 12 verse 31, "Love your neighbor as yourself." This implies that self-care is not just permissible, it is necessary. You matter just as much as those you serve, and your ability to uplift others depends on keeping yourself whole. Prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, it is essential for your ability to truly help others. Saying no isn't weakness, it is power. Boundaries are not barriers to love, they are lifelines that protect your energy and ensure that you are able to serve with a heart that is full, not depleted. In the end, burnout is not a sign of weakness, but of overextension and neglecting the divine rhythm of rest and renewal. As chosen ones, you are called to give, to serve, and to lead, but you are also called to rest, to replenish, and to embrace the strength that comes from pausing in God's presence. Without rest, you become a vessel drained of the energy needed to carry out your calling. But with rest, you become a source of strength for others, drawing from a well that does not run dry. Let the words of Jesus in Matthew 11 verse 28 remind you, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Embrace the rest that God offers, for in it you will find the strength to continue your mission, refreshed and renewed. In life, especially for those walking with faith, it's essential to recognize that saying no is not a sign of weakness, but an act of obedience and self-preservation. Setting clear boundaries without guilt or hesitation is an act of stewardship over your time, health, and calling. The Bible reminds us in 1 Corinthians 6 verse 19 to 20, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you were bought at a price. Therefore honor God with your bodies." By respecting our own well-being, we honor God's purpose for our lives, understanding that we are not called to be everything for everyone. Our true mission lies in fulfilling the unique purpose God has for us, and this requires clarity, focus, and often the wisdom to say no. People-pleasing may seem noble, but it comes at the cost of our own peace and strength. Jesus himself withdrew from the crowds to find rest, demonstrating the importance of taking time for self-care and reflection. C.S. Lewis, in the Screwtape Letters, wisely wrote, "You will find that the right answer is always to say no, and thereby make room for God's will to unfold in your life." Saying no is not about selfishness, but about aligning your actions with the priorities God has set for you. By doing so, you free yourself from unnecessary burdens and allow space for what truly matters. I've experienced this truth firsthand when I agreed to help with organizing a friend's wedding, despite being overwhelmed at work. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, but the pressure drained me emotionally and physically. When I finally admitted I could not take on the responsibility, to my surprise, my friend was understanding and grateful for my honesty. Saying no initially felt like failure, but it allowed me to realign with my core priorities. As Matthew 11 verse 28 invites us, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Sometimes, saying no is the most faithful decision we can make, as it opens the door for the rest we need to continue pursuing our divine calling. Boundaries are not barriers to love, rather. They are the foundation of freedom and spiritual growth. They help us protect our energy and direct our focus toward what truly aligns with God's plan for us. Just as Jesus set limits during his earthly ministry, we too must recognize when to step back in order to move forward. Perfection is not the goal, faithfulness and steady progress are. In Colossians 3 verse 23, we are reminded, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters." Each small, faithful step you take in managing your commitments adds up, creating momentum that propels you toward your greater purpose. So let go of what no longer serves you. As you say no to distractions and burdens, you open your life to the peace and clarity that allows you to step into God's plan more fully. Just as a tree needs to be pruned to bear more fruit, we too must sometimes let go in order to grow. With every small victory, you are creating space for greater breakthroughs. And with each step, you trust the process, knowing that God is guiding you toward the fulfillment of your purpose. In the journey of life, especially as we walk in faith, it's crucial to remember that success is built not in leaps, but in persistent, deliberate steps. In the Christian walk, this resonates deeply with the principle that God calls us to be faithful in the small things, for in them lies the foundation of our purpose. As the Apostle Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 9 verse 24, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." This is a call to steady persistence, to celebrate each victory, no matter how small, for they are the stepping stones to greater triumphs. Your progress is not about perfection, it is about moving forward, one faithful step at a time, trusting in God's plan for you. In life, as in the story of Apollo 13, success doesn't come by solving everything at once, it comes by tackling one problem at a time, focusing on the present and solving it with grace. In the same way, each minor success in our lives, no matter how seemingly insignificant, becomes a building block in the journey of survival and growth. Progress, as God reminds us in Zechariah 4 verse 10, is found in the small beginnings. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. As we track our small victories, whether through a journal, a chart, or a simple list, we are not merely recording our achievements, we are affirming God's faithfulness in our lives. These small victories remind us of His unwavering presence, and they serve as a spiritual armor against the lies of burnout that may whisper that we are not enough. It's easy to fall into the trap of defining our worth by what we achieve, but in Christ our identity goes far beyond our successes or failures. Jesus himself offers us the freedom from this burden, inviting us in Matthew 11 verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." To be chosen by God is not to be defined by constant striving, but by the peace of knowing that His grace is sufficient. In the words of C.S. Lewis, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. Your worth is not earned by your achievements, it is inherent because you are God's creation, loved and cherished by Him." In the process of reclaiming ourselves, it's important to remember that rest is not weakness, but rather the fuel that ignites our next steps forward. Just as Jesus took moments to rest and recharge, even in the midst of his mission, we too must honor our need for rest. As Psalm 23 verse 2-3 reminds us, "He makes me lie down in green pastures, he leads me beside quiet waters, he restores my soul." When we feel the tension, the exhaustion, and the disconnect from joy, these are not mere inconveniences but signs that we need to recalibrate, to pause and reflect. It is in this sacred rest that we are refueled and empowered to continue our mission. Your story is not just about surviving the weight of your responsibilities, but about thriving in the unique way God has called you to. This journey requires balance, knowing when to push forward and when to push forward and when to pause. And when you find yourself at the breaking point, remember that burnout is not a sign of defeat, but an invitation to rediscover your strength and purpose in God's timing. Share this message with others who may be carrying the same burdens, reminding them they are not alone. Together, let us embrace the wisdom of knowing when to rest and when to move forward, trusting that in every step, God is guiding us toward a future filled with His peace and purpose.